Have you ever wondered about the intriguing story of the Witch of Endor in the Bible? Today we're going to shed some light on this captivating tale. The tale of the Witch of Endor is found in the first book of Samuel, chapter 28. It's a story filled with desperation, fear, and unexpected revelations. Picture this: King Saul, a ruler tormented by his own decisions and the looming threat of war. In his desperation, he seeks the help of a woman known only as the Witch of Endor. This was a time when consulting mediums was considered a grave sin, yet the fear-stricken king was willing to risk it all for a glimmer of hope. The Witch of Endor isn't the villain of this story, but a character who plays a pivotal role in King Saul's journey. Now let's delve into this fascinating tale from the Bible. King Saul was in a state of despair and fear. Picture a king, once favored by God, now alone, abandoned and facing an impending colossal battle against the Philistines. The feeling of fear is palpable, like a thick fog, suffocating and blinding. Saul's heart pounded in his chest as he contemplated the daunting task ahead. His once clear and confident mind was now a whirl of anxiety and uncertainty. God, who had once guided him, was now silent. The heavens above him seemed like a brass ceiling, impenetrable and cold. He yearned for guidance, for a word, a sign, anything. But all he was met with was silence. It was a silence that gnawed at him, a silence that echoed his loneliness and desperation. In this state of despair, Saul made a decision, one that was in stark contrast to his previous decrees. He decided to consult a medium, a practice he had earlier banned in Israel. The law of the land was clear: do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. Yet in his desperation, Saul chose to ignore this command. He sought out the Witch of Endor, a woman known for her ability to commune with the spirits. It was a risky move, one that could cost him his kingdom and his life. But Saul was desperate. He was a man drowning in a sea of uncertainty, clutching at any straw that could possibly save him. In his desperation, Saul was willing to defy his own laws, willing to risk it all. It was a decision that would have far-reaching consequences, a decision that would mark a turning point in his life and reign. In his despair, Saul sought the Witch of Endor. This act of desperation, this turning away from God's law, was a pivotal moment in the life of King Saul, a moment that would set the stage for the events to come. Summoning the spirit of a deceased prophet is no small feat, so let's dive into the details of this extraordinary event. King Saul, in his desperation, took measures to cloak his identity before seeking the Witch of Endor. He exchanged his kingly robes for a simple disguise, hoping to mask his royal status from the witch. After all, Saul had previously banished all mediums from his kingdom, making his visit all the more precarious. Upon arriving, Saul urged the Witch of Endor to conjure up the spirit of Samuel. The witch, unaware of who her client really was, agreed to perform the summoning. The process was undoubtedly arcane, shrouded in mystery and supernatural elements. It's interesting to note that the Bible doesn't go into explicit detail about the method used for this summoning, leaving much to our imagination. Now imagine the shock that coursed through her when the spirit of Samuel appeared and she realized the true identity of her client. The Witch of Endor was taken aback. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath hitched. She was standing before Saul, the king who had banished her kind, and she had just summoned the spirit of the revered prophet Samuel. The spirit of Samuel manifested not as a vague apparition, but in a form recognizable to Saul. It was indeed Samuel, his mentor, his guide, the one who anointed him as king. But the reunion was far from joyous. The spirit of Samuel was not pleased with Saul's actions. And so, the stage was set for a confrontation between the spirit of a prophet and a desperate king. Samuel, even in death, had a message for Saul. A message that would change the course of history and set the stage for the end of Saul's reign. The spirit of Samuel was not pleased with Saul's actions. Samuel's spirit had a stern message for Saul. This message, as recounted in the first book of Samuel, chapter 28, was a harsh condemnation of Saul's actions and a chilling prophecy of his impending death. The conversation between Saul and Samuel's spirit was not a pleasant reunion. Samuel's spirit, brought back from the peaceful rest of death, was not pleased at being disturbed. He questioned Saul, asking, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul, desperate and fearful, explained his dire circumstances, his forsaken feeling as God had turned away from him. Samuel's response was stern and unforgiving. He chastised Saul, reminding him that God had turned away from him because he had not obeyed his commands. Samuel told Saul, "The Lord has done to you as he spoke by me, for the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David." But the most ominous part of Samuel's message was yet to come. He prophesied Saul's impending death, saying, "Moreover, the Lord will give Israel also with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me." This prophecy was a grim foretelling of Saul's future, a clear indication that his time as king was coming to an abrupt and tragic end. This conversation, this condemnation, left Saul shaken to his core. He had sought answers and guidance, but instead, he had received a stern rebuke and a prophecy of doom. Saul was left reeling, his hopes dashed, his fears confirmed. Saul was left with the knowledge of his imminent demise. He had sought to change his fate, but instead, he had only confirmed it. He had hoped for redemption, but instead, he had only received condemnation. This stern message from Samuel's spirit was a stark reminder of the consequences of disobedience and the inevitability of divine justice. Saul's fate was sealed, and he was left to face the consequences of his actions. Every story in the Bible has a lesson, and the story of the Witch of Endor is no exception. In the aftermath of his encounter with Samuel's spirit, King Saul was filled with a deep sense of dread. He was afraid not only because of the prophecy of his impending doom, but also because he had strayed from the path of righteousness. His fear was so intense that he refused to eat, a physical manifestation of his spiritual distress. However, the Witch of Endor, despite her role as a medium, showed compassion toward Saul. She insisted on feeding him, displaying an act of kindness in the face of despair. This shows us that even in the darkest moments, there's always room for empathy and compassion. Now, what are the lessons we can glean from this story? Firstly, the story underscores the consequences of disobedience. Saul, in his desperation, turned to a medium, a practice expressly forbidden by God. His disobedience led him to a path of self-destruction. This serves as a stark reminder for us that straying from God's commands can lead to dire consequences. Secondly, the story highlights the importance of faith and trust in God. Saul, in his fear and doubt, sought answers from the spirit world instead of trusting in God's plan for him. His lack of faith ultimately led to his downfall. And lastly, the story teaches us about the power of repentance. Saul, in his final moments, realized the gravity of his actions. However, it was too late for him to make amends. This prompts us to reflect on our actions and encourages us to seek forgiveness before it's too late. In conclusion, the story of the Witch of Endor is a cautionary tale, filled with lessons on obedience, faith, and repentance. It underscores the importance of staying true to God's commands and the dangers of straying from them. Saul's story serves as a reminder of the consequences of turning away from God. The story of the Witch of Endor is one of the most intriguing tales in the Bible. Its compelling narrative takes us through the desperate measures of King Saul, driven to consult a medium, transgressing God's laws. This act of desperation leads to the summoning of the prophet Samuel's spirit, a sight that shakes Saul to his core. The spirit of Samuel in his divine wisdom condemns Saul, predicting his downfall and the end of his reign. This story, found in the first book of Samuel, chapter 28, serves as a stark reminder of the perils of straying from the path of righteousness and the consequences of disobeying divine laws. It imparts valuable lessons of faith, obedience, and the ultimate sovereignty of God's will. If you found this story intriguing, please give us a thumbs up. Become a part of our growing family and subscribe to our channel. May God bless you in all your endeavors. Thank you for watching.